So what's up, fam? It's your boy Demuir here, purveyor of all sounds underground. Many of you have asked me about this particular tool, the tool being Softube's Console 1. And I predominantly purchased it because it's been great for bringing forth a typical SSL analog-based simulation to my arsenal. Considering I went to UAD plugins and the UAD hardware as well in terms of the Apollo Twin and the Apollo 8, this purchase just made sense to me. I love the hardware component where you can actually, put your hands on things and twist knobs and make adjustments to EQ, and that's not even getting into the sounds of things, So that was predominantly my main reason of purchasing the product itself. Let's give it a quick listen just so you know what I'm talking about. The idea of working on really deep sort of jacking vibe here, and what I get from Console 1 is lots of control, the way it works is through a few things. Well, three key things. One is let me just leave this on. One is the dynamic shaper, which controls transients. The other is the EQ, and the other component is the compressor over here, which I don't have on right now for this particular track. Well, let's just dive into how I set it up. And the way you set up Console 1, what the folks at Softube recommend is that you have it on every strip or channel of your DAW, which is what I have here. So I have it here on my audio instruments here, MIDI instruments as well, and these are channels for the individual drums in Machine. I have it there as well to be able to EQ. I don't have it on my buses necessarily over here, or nor do I have it on my main channel because those are entirely different things. But I use this piece of kit first and foremost as my predominant EQ and a way to control the transients where necessary. So if we just dive back into here, I'm just going to leave this on. This is how I've EQ'd the main loop. I've cut out the bass using a bell curve type of EQ on the equalizer, but you also get a choice of using a cut or a shelf type of curve. For this case, I'm using the bell on this default desk being the 4000E. The other thing I love about Console, as I said, was you have the transient shaper here to control the dynamics. And when we give this a listen, let me just try and solo that out. You could hear what it's doing there in terms of the sustain. I use this function quite a bit when I need to make things a little bit tighter on certain instruments in the mix. But overall, I think in general it's great for bringing that analog feel. I don't engage the compressor too much, and that's just a function of having a lot of different compression tools available to me. So most of the time I'm right in the EQ in the dynamic shaper, and I love the EQ because it shows the pre and post effect that you're having on the signal itself as you're EQing through. And you're able to, if you don't have great products like Melda Analyzer, you're able to just, A/B between different instruments, what sort of collisions are happening, where you need to carve out room in the mix. Visually, it's just fantastic for that purpose. The other thing I love is over here, and I'll get Wano to blow this up, is you can change the order of how the signal flows through. So this button over here, you probably won't be able to see it, but you'll definitely see it on the screen here. On the hardware, I'm literally pressing a button that's changing the signal flow, meaning if we start at the top here, it goes through the equalizer, then through the dynamic shaper over here, controlling transients, and then the compressor. And then you got the other option of having it go through the dynamic shaper, then compression, and then the EQ. And the default, which works well for me, is having it go through the dynamic shaper, EQ, then compressor. I think it's better in most cases for me to control the signal up front in terms of the transients, and then the EQ and compression whenever I do engage the signal with compression through Softube's Console 1. It's just things that sweeten the signal in the color of it, in the picture of it. You know, and overall workflow, I just love, like if we go back here, you know, for kicks, I think I've mentioned this in another video, you got a phase invert, which is a handy tool. So if you got phasing on a signal, you're just pressing this button that will basically flip or invert the signal to stop that. Then you have filters to compressor, which I don't use too much, but you can sidechain particular bands of frequencies, which is awesome. And you can get into parallel compression too by engaging that and going over to the compressor component, which is great. But again, like I said, I don't use it too often, but I'm certain in the few times that I've used it that it works very well and does exactly what I need. The other powerful thing about Softube's Console 1 is you can literally have console desk within, you know, the overall project. And what I mean by that is, well, multiple console desks. So we have the 4000E here, but let's say on you know, for this particular track, actually let me go over here to 17. I could say, you know what, I don't want to use the 4000E desk for this particular channel. On channel 17, I want to engage the British Class A, which is another desk you can load up by simply holding down Shift, Load Strip on the top, which is basically the first button, and then you hit OK, and now it's a completely different desk within the same project. So I can flip between a 4000 desk and a British Class A. For my workflow, I don't do this often. I'm just demonstrating to you that the option is there. I use the British Class A desk more on techie based projects because the EQ, it's mimicking a Neve desk, I believe, and you'll see the cut here only goes, the low cut only goes to 360 hertz. It tends to be much more of a bass driven and colored sounding type of desk, which I love for my tech stuff. And the transient shaper looks quite different. So if we flip in between the two, this is the 4000 transient shaper and EQ, and then we go back to the British Class A. You can see the differences where it's mimicking the Neve sort of noms and ratios when it comes to the transient shaper, and EQ as well from a low cut perspective, only going to 360, whereas on the 4000 you can go right up to 6000 hertz. So really great piece of flexibility you have with that option. And the other thing I love is, you know, you can look at a history of adjustments that you've made in your mix, right? So it literally tells you, based on things you changed on a particular instrument, what you've done, and you can go through. It's kind of like an exaggerated undo option, and you can just scroll through the different steps, and there's not much here because I'm just showing this for demonstrative purposes. But let's say you're in a very heavy project, you can go back and look at all of the history in terms of different mix adjustments you've made and go back and recall things, which is phenomenal. So I have nothing but good things to say about this. I think at the time I purchased this, it was just over 1,000 Canadian, or around $750 US. And the add-on British Class A desk was only $75 at the time it was on sale. I highly recommend this piece of kit for you to use in your projects, in your DAW. I'm using Logic here, and it's just a welcomed piece of kit. And if we go back to, if you don't like working in this particular view necessarily, or you just want to see something quickly on the fly, let's say, your hardware is down and you have to send it in for repairs, you still have all of the digital components and references here by simply clicking on the plugin itself within the channel, and you can see what you've done EQ wise in terms of boost and cuts. So nothing but fantastic things to say about this. I will get more technical on a future video regarding this, but I highly recommend using Softube's Console 1. The other benefit here, before I forget, is that it's integrated with UAD plugins as well. So you can load UAD plugins and control them from the hardware piece of kit, which is great integration between the two companies. So glad they've focused on those synergies. So let me know your thoughts on this one. I would highly recommend, again, going after Softube's Console 1. I'm not being paid to endorse the product. It's just something that I love to use for my production, and has aligned nicely with my desire to have more of a warm and analog based sound. Peace.